Hey everybody, this is Chris Thompson, and welcome to session number 24 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. He drives a black car, wears black steel-toed boots, and listens to Black Sabbath. Welcome,
and
Mike.
Black Label Society, Chris. Let's stay on the whole metal ilk today. It is downtown Toronto, raining on the heels of Hurricane Sandy. That was a bit of a fizzle, at least in the Toronto area, but there's traffic lights out and it is pouring with rain. So as you know, I could not possibly be happier as I welcome you to today's program from the very epicenter of the very center of the epicenter of global and international and world hypnosis. Hey, you want to talk about storms? I think Sandy fizzled for us at least, but you want to see the biggest storm imaginable, all you need is a good telescope. Because if you look at Jupiter, you will see the famed red spot that is always pointing at the Earth. And it is a storm that has been raging for millennia, non-stop, and it is actually larger than the planet Earth. So let's talk about real storms. You got to go to Jupiter for that.
That'll put things in perspective, won't it? Yeah, Toronto was not too bad. I mean, we had a lot of winds last night. My power went out. My kids ended up sleeping on my floor because they were afraid of the dark. But that was about the worst of it.
You have the technology to fix that, Chris. What's the deal?
I didn't mind. It was they want to sleep.
You didn't mind your kids being terrified. And he writes a thing on parenting.
I treated it like a camp out. I said, okay, we'll have a camp out.
Yeah, scary camp out with Jason and Mike Myers, and it's almost Halloween as we record this. In fact, Halloween is tomorrow.
Oh, it is. Yeah, we're recording this on October the 30th. So, all right, let's get to the topic at hand. Hey, last podcast, we talked about something that I thought was fun. It's the idea of confusing people with language that makes utterly no sense, but you deliver it with such congruence that people just get completely confused and
yes, press stating it all when you put it back in the beginning and turn that time around, and you're going to figure this thing in the end.
Press at the blots.
Correct.
So, have you had any fun with that lately?
Not at all, Chris. I've been having fun in numerous other ways, but not that way. Have you been messing with language patterns?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring it up because, everyone gets spam email, and I got a spam email that was hilarious because it made absolutely no sense. Usually it's, here's how to make money online or whatever, make all your problems go away or buy gold watches for cheap or whatever it is. This one, I have no idea what it was, except to say that knowing enough about internet and search engine optimization and things like that, somebody had written what was otherwise a normal English sentence and then a computer spun it over and over so that it could make a whole bunch of unique variations that would seemingly make sense, except they don't. And this is what I got emailed. Liable to fade like any book cloth, linen buckram, the highest priced, fight over who gets the most of this. If it seems one convert had come across from the south from Sweden.
What?
You're going, yeah. So I thought...
You're making this up.
I'm totally not. I'm reading it right in front of me. So... I thought, well, I'm going to save this one and start using it with telemarketers, which is exactly what I did.
So you memorized it, or you're just going to keep it on hand on a little printed card with you everywhere?
My memory's not as good as you, so here's what happens. If I'm working down in my office and I've got my computer in front of me, I just keep a little window with a sticky note on it, and I get a telemarketer call, and I answer it, and they deliver their pitch about air duct cleaning or whatever it is, and I just launch right into this statement. And they go... excuse me, sir, and I just read it again.
Wide awake now.
I just read it again. I figure all I have to do, and I learned this from you, is read it congruently one more time. Then they ask me what's going on.
Yeah, just keep doing it.
They eventually hang up.
Yeah. My brother-in-law did some really cool stuff with telemarketers. This messes with people's heads. So somebody will phone and say, oh, we're calling from, the Toronto Star newspaper, let's say. I'm making this up. But this is the sort of thing he'd do. And we're offering a special deal. Okay, let me get a pen. So he just disappears like 2 minutes. And he comes back and he says, okay, who's calling? And they say, the Toronto Star. And he said, and that's what exactly? They said, well, we're a newspaper. Okay. And what is the purpose of your call? Well, we have a special offer. And what is the offer? The offer is we'll give you, 2 months free if you sign up now. And sign up what exactly? For the Toronto Star. And where is this? This is in Toronto. And what do I get? And he'll just keep going round and round the loop until out of sheer frustration they either hang up or shoot themselves.
This sounds like the idiot running the meta model, except it's for comedy, so it's funny.
That's right. Remember my theory. Life should be effortless and enjoyable and vaguely annoying to other people.
All right, so we can use this as a segue into our first topic of hypnosis/NLP. So that guy that friend of yours who was running that program of confusing the telemarketer, he was essentially doing a meta model process.
Brother-in-law. Yes, he was.
So let's talk a little bit about, because we want to get into this a little later, about the meta model versus the Milton model.
Okay, well, they're opposite sides of the same coin, of course. The meta model is an information gathering method. It's using language to clarify language. So if the person says, I feel really, depressed, and you say, how specifically are you depressing yourself? You turn it back into process, for instance, or he really annoys me. Who specifically annoys you, or how specifically does he annoy you? And just using language to clarify language. And this, of course, is Magic, Volume 1, John Grinder and Richard Bandler. And it's using, finding out the deep structure of language by using the right questioning process. Naturally, the opposite side of that is the Milton model, which, although the meta model will keep you out of trance, the Milton model will put you into trance. So instead, we are being artfully vague, and we're saying things like, as you notice that particular sensation now, and begin to realize at a deep level that your understandings of everything I'm currently saying are going to resonate at that place that you know from before. Now you can let it happen. I'm saying stuff it's word salad. It's basically meaningless. So you're forced to do a trans-derivational search and go internally to find meaning. So the meta model, Magic really, uses language to clarify language. The Milton model uses language to obscure and cause the person to internalize and attach meaning to what you're saying.
Right. So the meta model is used so that you can help somebody identify exactly what's going on internally that's causing an emotional state.
It's enriching their map of the world. Mm-hmm. They're often out of touch with the detail, and you can give them a richer map and make connections to the deep structure of their language by asking the right sorts of questions, and then the person will very often get fixed just by doing that.
Right. And one point, you never ask somebody a why question, do you?
Well, not if you're trying to solve a problem, because why questions tend to amplify the problematic state. As we've said in previous podcasts, that you don't want to say to someone, why are you depressed? Why are you always so angry? Whatever. What? Are you kidding? Well, if you had my miserable life, and you'll send them off in a tirade, and they will access all those nasty states because the why questions keep you stuck. They amplify stuck states. You need process words like how, which move you from a stuck state into a better state.
Right. So you never want to ask your child, why are you always such a misbehaved little tyrant?
Right. And a friend of mine, very nice guy, he went through all kinds of problems with his kids. And as he told me, he said, we're very big on why in this house.
Yes.
Why did you do that? Why? How's the kid going to answer? Why did you spill that? I don't know. I guess jostled it with my hand. I'm telling you how I did it. Why I did it? I don't know. I'm an idiot.
So what'd you say to him? And how's that working out for you?
Yeah, how specifically does that help you? Yeah.
Right. Okay, so the reason that I brought that up is Milton Model. We had an interesting email question come in. Let me just see if I can find it here in the notes that I wrote.
We're going through the thousands of emails we get every single day, all printed off as hard copies.
Yeah, here. Okay, so here was the question. I got an email from a fellow who was interested in the A Good Night's Sleep program from the website. He wrote in, he said, I do shift work and I'd like to order a good night's sleep from the website, as long as it doesn't have any suggestions about going to sleep at the same time every night in the hypnosis track.
Good grief.
As a shift worker, this would be counterproductive. Sir.
Yeah, as anybody would be counterproductive. At exactly 8:30 every night, you'll start to fall into a deep sleep, and by 9 o'clock, you'll be conked out for 12. As if anybody would do that. Well, no, what am I saying? I can think of all kinds of people out there who would do that. It's not surprising in the slightest that he's asking this question. It is a legitimate question. No, we don't deal with people on that basis. That is akin to scripts again, the junk food, the training wheels of hypnosis. So what we are going to do instead of providing a script that you'll always do this or you'll always do that is we give you principles. Principles you can follow to have a better life, to create better trances, and have more fun. Guys, if it's not fun, it really isn't worth doing. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing we say when people come up for the Architecture of Hypnosis course. We got everybody in the room, and it's a beautiful setting at the University of Toronto. And I say, now, there is one thing that will absolutely get you thrown out of this class. And everyone's like really on edge. And I say, if I catch anyone not having fun, you are out the door. But it's got to be fun, because then the learning curve goes really high. And the same with anything we're presenting. Give people options and let them build in fun and different ways of doing things. None of this rigid, you'll fall asleep at 9 o'clock. I can't stand all that stuff. I hate rigidity in any form. It smacks of fascism to me, and I'm a big believer in personal freedom and doing what the heck we want to do, provided we're not messing with anybody else.
So let's just make sure we wrap up on the Milton Model discussion here, though.
Whoa, we've gone full circle.
In a CD product where you obviously are scripting it out to some extent.
Right.
what kind of suggestion are you giving instead of, you will fall asleep every night at 9 p.m.?
Well, you can offer options. You know, at the appropriate time, you'll begin to get tired and sleepy, and we'll find a place to lie down. And, you know, you just make it appropriate. Everything has to be appropriate. That's why I'm never doing an immune system tune-up with someone. I would never say, oh, your immune system is getting 10 million times stronger. Oh, that's good. Let's have it attacking random protein, you know, in their system and their own cells. That's a great idea. No. I say appropriately. Your immune system will react properly and appropriately, and let the unconscious mind determine that. The same with all of our stuff. We offer principles. We don't give you rigid rules. And back just a second to that, because we touched on the scripts again, and this is an ongoing source of irritation to me, almost as irritating as, Chris, you keep touching my knee underneath the recording table with your leg. Just back off. It's very irritating. It's also the whole thing. Actually, it was mine hitting yours, I think. But the whole thing about scripts, right? Scripts, I think they should be eliminated forever. It's essentially the same as putting an intermediate step in that is not necessary. You don't need to learn scripts. You need to swim. You need to swim in the deep end of hypnosis, and that's what we teach you. We get you swimming. We don't talk about swimming. We don't inflate water wings and sit around looking at life jackets and go out in boats. No, we throw you in the deep end and get you swimming right away. So by the end of the first day, you're doing a lot of great hypnotic swimming. It's people who teach their children, and you probably could speak on this more eloquently than me, Chris, but people who teach their children baby talk, right when the language acquisition circuits are at their strongest. They're teaching them an intermediate language. Well, do you want your susu and your baba, and you got to go to the doo-doo? And it's insane. Why do you teach kids this stuff? Why would anybody do that when they're at the place that their brain is, the language matrix of Noam Chomsky is in position to learn the fastest at this time? It boggles my mind how incredibly stupid people are.
Yeah, that you can never underestimate the power of human stupidity.
No, and that's why I used to say in my practice, you can't fix stupid. You really can't. I mean, some people are just stupid. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah, it is, and I love that line. It's become one of my favorite lines, Mike. You can't fix stupid. So anyway, moving on. Then we've talked about ecological suggestions and the Milton Model and Meta Model, and what do I want to talk about next here with you, Mike? Oh, here we go. Let's talk about this next question that came in, because again, this comes back to some of the basics of hypnosis and people overcomplicating things and turning it into annoyance. Got a question?
Turning it into annoyance. It sounds like it's going to be good.
Yeah, so here was the question. Just wondering if these CDs, this was obviously another person interested in buying CDs from their website, just wondering if these CDs use the, and this is exact wording here, ultra annoying method of several separate voices coming at you from different perspectives.
Well, so the answer is no, we don't do that stuff.
That would be someone else.
I know what he means. I've heard some of these things. Voices flying in, or, oh, you're going deep asleep now. I'm falling into a train. It's almost like being in on an acid trip on Halloween, surrounded by a bunch of psychotic doctors all yelling at you at once. And that's an interesting metaphor. I don't know where I came up with it.
I don't know.
It was just generated unconsciously.
Close to Halloween.
But I have heard that sort of recording, and it's just overwhelming and annoying. I mean, there's good double inductions you can do that will have a glanative effect, but this kind of thing it's overwhelming and annoying. I find in general, people tend to complicate hypnosis. And one of the eye-opening breakthroughs people get is when they discover it's easy. Hypnosis is easy. You don't need a course of 75 CDs or any of this stuff. You can break down anything into an infinite number of parts if you work at it. But the question is it worthwhile to do that? Is it useful? You don't need to put out dozens and dozens of CDs on one topic because, this isn't a legal brief. It's hypnosis. You keep it really, really simple. And if you learn some basic skills that are applicable in a wide variety of situations, you'll never be stuck with what to say or what to do. You don't have to memorize, lost performatives with a missing referential index and all these complicated patterns.
Yeah, I would say maybe a good way of thinking about it is imagine when you're in grade school and you're just learning to compose simple sentences when you're learning handwriting. I mean, you can keep hypnosis that simple, can't you? You don't need overly complex.
Right, and it's probably best if you do keep it that simple. Trance work is an effortless thing. It just open a door, trance the person out, give them suggestions, make sure it's ecological, bring them out of it. You don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and going through flashcards and learning all these complex patterns, which just become sort of a jigsaw puzzle of interlocking sentences and phrases and things. They're just not necessary. Save your money.
I like that one. So, okay, here is another question that came in since you just inspired me to think about this now. Complexity of hypnotic language patterns. So here's the question. Says, I'm considering buying a hypnosis training course online. You don't seem to have one yet. Do you recommend any? I'd love to study with you, but I'd like to get started with a home study course first, if possible. So, Mike, what do you think about that? Funny timing, because I just noticed somebody launched a very large collection of DVDs as a hypnosis home study course.
Okay, I know the one you're referring to.
We won't name names.
No, and I'm sure it's a good product. This is, one of the good trainers out there. I'm sure the product is good. The question is it necessary? It's always back to that. Is a more complex model a better one? Now, Chris, you know this from my jiu-jitsu classes. Our form of jiu-jitsu is the British Special Forces one. It's just designed for the military to shut people down in 2 seconds or less. It's not, we don't wear gis or anything. We wear steel-toed shoes and carry edged weapons and do cool stuff like that. Now, our system is useful because it's simple. We don't have to throw in all these different things and complicated moves and stances and all. No, we just get it done. It's the same with hypnosis. We're back to that same point again. Yes, I'm sure this is a good course. It may cost you a fortune. Will you learn a bunch of stuff you don't need? Very likely. In fact, the longer the course, the less likely you'll wind up wading through the whole thing. There's a whole psychology in that, which I know you're aware of, Chris. If you sell an infinitely large course, if one does that, chances are good the person will not complete it and probably won't send it back and get a refund.
Actually, let's talk about that briefly. So I have a theory that there's two ways, and I've been I won't call it the victim of one. It's a completely willing subject participating in this, but there are two ways that you can essentially guarantee people don't refund your products, which is interesting. One is to make it so darn long that no one completes it. And then what happens is the person buying it feels that it's their obligation to finish the product.
Oh, so it just sits on their shelf.
Yeah, before they make a judgment call and say, oh, well, I should refund this because I don't like it. But, I haven't gotten through it yet. And what if DVD number 38 contains that key?
That missing piece of information I just need. Yeah.
So what happens is people never finish it, and then they feel obligated to at least give it an honest shot before they say, hey, you know what, I want my money back. The other one is to give people a money-back guarantee time limit that is indefinite. And that's what, and the product is quite good, but Jamie Smart did that for a long time.
Solid, yeah.
And I like his stuff. I bought a DVD course from him that I admit I have never finished. And, I only got started, and then I just got distracted with all the other stuff that's going on. Anyway, I know that I can refund this thing tomorrow, the next day, next year, the year after that.
So because he offers this infinite refund program, you're never going to do it because you know it's always there as a potential.
Yeah,
That's clever.
It never expires. Now, here's the beauty of it. It's probably the most ethical refund policy that you can have is to give somebody an unlimited time period.
You won't see us doing it.
Yeah, now we don't do that because right now we use PayPal, and PayPal lets us give people a refund up to 60 days. And literally on day 61, when I log in on the back end, the ability to grant a refund disappears. It's not there. That's why we offer 60 days, which is still pretty good. It's 2 months. A lot of people only offer 30 days. And there's been some interesting studies done that show if you offer somebody a 30, a 60, or a 90-day refund, money-back guarantee policy, the 90-day will outperform the 30. So it's...
What do you mean outperform?
Outperform meaning fewer people will request a refund if you grant them a longer refund policy. It's an interesting psychological...
Because it's always waiting in the future, so there seems to be no urgency.
There's no urgency, and then people don't take action. Now, we're not encouraging you to buy stuff that you'll never use. I've done it. I'm sure everyone's done it. But it is nice to know that those people out there who actually honor their refund policies, I think
that's fantastic.
It's safe to buy from them, and I'm sure that if I sent Jamie Smart his DVDs back, I am sure he would refund me. I have no interest in doing it.
Very ethical.
He's got good products.
He's got good stuff. I've sent people to buy his salad cards, his language pattern cards, and Ericksonian hypnosis cards. As you know, I've recommended those in my trainings for years because he puts out a really good product, and now that you can get them on iTunes as well as an app, then it's even easier to buy them. You just have them immediately.
That's right, because you can download those flashcards right to your iPhone. Right, which is kind of cool. So speaking of which, we are going to be putting out an app. We'll talk more about that in another show. But
it's going to be amazing.
We're going to do a creativity app. I think we did talk about it on a prior podcast, but we haven't.
Right, the Delphi deck. Okay, let's mention it. But first, I'm going to blow my nose. I'm going to sneeze.
Sure, go ahead. So Mike's going to go and sneeze off, and I will look at the next topic that we're going to talk about. Oh, I know what it's going to be. Hypnosis certification. So we had a phone call come in, and we get this kind of question a fair bit. People want to know what kind of certifications they need in order to practice hypnotherapy. If they're going to build a business being a hypnotherapist, do they need letters after their name? Depending on where they live, I know it's going to be different, but
well, there's a very simple answer to that. My nose has stopped itching, by the way. When one has a nose as large as mine, the itch can be phenomenal. Having said that, yes, the question about certification, we do not certify people as hypnotherapists or as therapists or anything. We certify people as having studied a 40-hour architecture of hypnosis course. We're certifying that they have passed the training and have studied hypnosis in considerable depth. It is down to the individual legislation of their own, state, province, municipality as to what they require in order to operate as a therapist or hypnotherapist or whatever. It changes pretty well everywhere you go. So that's incumbent upon you to determine that. What we can do is give you training, but we can't certify you as a therapist or something in the area in which you reside.
And in some regions, including Ontario, the word therapist is becoming policed in many ways.
It's really, everything's becoming policed. I mean, what we can be sure of every year is, regardless of who becomes elected, we'll get more wars, bigger, sweeping governments. We'll get more regulations and more laws on the books and more irritation in our private lives and more taxes. Just this happens forever. But yes, legislation is something that must be looked into very carefully if you're going to practice any kind of therapy. You want to be very, very careful not to step on anyone's toes. Now, having said that, sometimes legislation is just ludicrous. There was something called the Ontario Hypnosis Act, I think of 1967, if I'm not mistaken, where it was illegal to do hypnosis unless you were a doctor, a psychologist, or a dentist. Now, I didn't include psychiatrists because all psychiatrists are MDs anyway. So doctors, dentists, or psychologists, meaning you could practice hypnosis for 15 years, 20 years, be really, really good at it, and you wouldn't be allowed to do it at all for any reason, not even on a friend, just at a party. Whereas a dentist who studied how to drill teeth and do root canals and extractions and so on, and fluoride treatments, which are questionable at best, all of these things, a dentist is now able to go to, the local Barnes Noble or Chapter's bookstore, buy a book on hypnosis and start using it in his practice immediately because he's a dentist, so he's qualified.
You could basically just read scripts and get away with
it. Pretty much, yeah. Yes, and I guess often that was the case. But that's the kind of ludicrous legislation you will see. And the law was dropped essentially as being unenforceable because you can't even get 10 people to agree on what hypnosis is. And how are you going to monitor this sort of thing? That means we're going to get rid of all advertising. You can get rid of music at sporting events, which tends to wind people up. We'll get rid of sporting events, too, because that creates trances. Better shut down television as well, where we're at it. And, conversation causes hypnosis. So, by and large, you will run into a lot of bizarre legislation worldwide. It seems that there is no lack of ludicrous people in political positions who have nothing better to do than interfere with our lives.
Yeah, I remember when you told me the story the first time. You said you'd have to get people to agree on what hypnosis is and that it even so-called exists. Then you'd have to get them to prove that you caused the hypnosis.
Right.
And was there a third part of that I'm missing?
No, I don't know. I think that those two pretty well cover it. Yeah.
Those are pretty much it. So anyway, the key point here.
The key point is the three things. They'd have to prove that hypnosis exists as a separate state.
Oh, yeah.
They would have to then prove that the person on stage or whatever was in that state, and then they'd have to prove that you were the one who caused it to happen.
As opposed to them doing it themselves,
right.
Which is what we always say. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. Anyway, so the label hypnosis and the label therapist, you don't use those labels now when you do work with clients, do you? You talk about being an unconscious
coach. No, I'm an unconscious coach, and I'm an educator. I teach people how to leave their problems behind, how to break out of the labyrinth that they're in, because the Mandel model says that your client is your client because they're stuck in a labyrinth, primarily of their own design, but often through circumstance. And in a labyrinth, there's minotaurs and areas of darkness and traps and things, and people go round and round and can't find their way out of particular areas. And so as an assistant, as a coach, as an educator, I cannot drag them out of the labyrinth. No one can, but I can shine a light on the way out, and they can do the walking out and kill the minotaur themselves and get on with their life.
So at the end of the day, there's probably a lot of very qualified people who don't use the term hypnotherapist in their title, right?
Yes, I mean, that's very often the case.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about this one here. We had a nice fellow who wrote in from a Canadian. I won't be specific about who he is or where he's located, but guy in Canada wrote in and was diagnosed by his therapist with borderline personality disorder, wanted to know if hypnosis might be effective, and apparently his therapist, when testing him for suggestibility and if susceptibility to hypnosis, did some kind of eye roll test and then said, nope, sorry, you're not a good candidate, so we're going to have to go back to archaic methods that don't work. What do you think of all this?
Well, I know exactly what the test is. It's this nonsensical idea that we all have the same ability to move our eyes around because our eyes get equal amounts of exercise by and large through the day, and that someone who is more suggestible will be able to roll their eyes higher up and show more whites. So the idea is you get the person to lock their head stock steady and raise their eyes upward, and the more white they show underneath the iris of their eye, the better the hypnotic subject they will be. Well, maybe not. My theory is, like, all of this stuff is less an indication of how susceptible someone is to hypnosis than it is an indication of the ineptness of the person attempting to do the hypnosis.
Okay, so that brings us to the idea that let's say you're working with someone who has post-traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder, one of these emotional disruptions that you'd like to help them resolve. Hypnosis is one way of helping them, right? But we've got some other tools in the toolbox.
Right. I don't work with BPD. I don't work with any psychiatric problems. I work with pain sometimes, if their doctor gives me permission. And I show people how to overcome post-traumatic stress disorder and chronic grief and depression and so on, provided, again, I'm working within the constraints of what is legal. Having said that, the client is perfectly free to alleviate their own problems, and I can educate them in how to do so. One of the ways, of course, is one of the energy therapies like Be Set Free Fast, or EFT, or thought field therapy, which is TFT, or tapas acupressure technique. But out of all of those, and I've trained in pretty well all of them, although the thought field therapy was just brief. It was with Willem Lammers, a Swiss psychologist, a number of years ago over the course of a weekend. All of them I've laid by the wayside because I'm using faster EFT exclusively now, which is Richard Smith is his name? I can't remember.
I don't know who it was either, but
yeah,
maybe
it's very good. He does a great job.
Do you want to put a video up on YouTube, or just refer people to other good ones?
Refer people to his stuff, because faster EFT. Google that. It's a wonderful thing. And just this last week, Chris, I had a meeting with a friend of mine, Jennifer Kolari, who's an excellent therapist. She and I did a He Said, She Said segment on the Stephen and Chris show on CBC for a long time together, and I present the male perspective and she present the female perspective. But the problem was, most of the time we agreed. And just a wonderful therapist. She will sometimes see 12 people in a day. She's got a therapist's heart. She's really, really good at working with families and that. But she had never seen any of the energy psychologies. And I went and met with her last week and taught her how to do some forms of EFT and faster EFT as well. And she just loves it. She's getting amazing results with her client. And anyone who is doing therapy, anyone who's a hypnotist, you need to know how to do some of these things, because they can be great if the person abreacts. They can be great under a wide variety of circumstances. And since hypnotic trance is an amplifier of experience, anything you do in a trance is going to be stronger. So I recommend you learn faster EFT. Google it. Do his brief course online. It's free, and it takes 10 seconds to do a round of faster EFT, and the results are astounding. Then you do what I do, and I don't have to now, but every night before you go to bed, sit in your easy chair and say, what bothers me? What irritates me? What makes me unhappy? Think back to school. Think back to memories from public school, high school, when you're in Boy Scouts, or, on that hockey team as a kid, or what happened at the workplace that you didn't like, or relational problems, and things that's carrying negative charge of depression, anger, sadness, trauma, fear, whatever, and you use the faster EFT and reduce it to zero. Just keep tapping it away. Every night, spend 5-10 minutes on this, and after 10 days or 2 weeks, you won't have anything to tap on anymore. You will feel so much better, and you'll be starting to integrate, and that's what it's all about.
It is almost alarming how well it works, I will say that.
Kind of scary.
Yes.
But we can tap that away too, right?
Right, exactly. Okay, so before the closing metaphor, Mike, I just want to make sure we mention for the guy who had asked about hypnosis training programs, because we don't have one yet, Mike hasn't created one yet, we do have one that's about to be released on hypnotic power inductions, and this is about...
Oh, yes. This will be out by the time this podcast is out, won't it?
Yeah, so probably. So give a quick commercial on who it's for and what it accomplishes for the buyer.
Hypnotic Power Inductions is a premium product. There's 5 inductions on it. One was taught to me by the late, great Derek Balmer, one of my mentors, and I've reworked it and made it better, if I may say so. The other 4 are original inductions I've come up with that are useful across the board, whether you're doing street hypnosis, casual hypnosis on friends, whether you're a stage hypnotist, or whether you're doing therapy. These are all amazing ways of zoning people through the floor really, really quickly. They're leverage or leverage inductions that open the door of trance very quickly. And then we've thrown in traditional sledgehammer induction that's very well known, showing a nice, easy way of zoning someone through the floor super fast with an impact style induction as well. So this is a product that is a DVD. You can watch each of the inductions done with 6 different people, all unprepared, all exactly as you see it at the University of Toronto. And each person, I zone them out with a trance using a different method in each one. You can play it many times, learn the system, and then it comes with an audio CD where Chris and I, in the style of this podcast, discuss each one of these inductions and give you all the answers to the frequently asked questions, and you'll be an expert in power inductions, and you'll be ahead of 90% of the hypnotists on the planet if you learn 1 or 2 of these.
Right. So the next step would be to teach people how to do things like deepening, how to utilize the trance for therapeutic change, etc. And those are probably things we will be coming up with
in the future.
In the future. So.
By the way, the next Architecture of Hypnosis course will happen in Toronto in April. Check our website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. We're doing 2 weekends this time, so local people don't have to take time off work. We have a Saturday, Sunday, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday following, so it's 5 days again. We have 3 confirmed already, so we're going to start posting the countdown as we fill the class.
Right, including our student coming the furthest ever, I think, from Holland.
From Holland for this course,
so,
yes.
Hey, Mark, we'll see you there.
Yes, we will.
Okay, so let's save the rest of our material for another podcast because we like to keep these to half an hour. So, Mike, how about a closing metaphor?
The closing metaphor today is the story of the HMS Corinthia. I think it's actually RMS Corinthia. Yes, we just found this online. We had to check the name of it exactly. When I came to Canada, it was in 1957, and I was 4 years old. And Bell Canada, back then, was the Bell Telephone Company of Canada, because the telephone is a Canadian invention. Back then, they were advertising in England and in Scotland for engineers to come to Canada and work for the Bell Telephone Company. My father, being an engineer who trained in the British Army, applied for the job as an electrical engineer, got the job, and came to Canada ahead of my sister and I and my mother. And he found a place in Toronto at 407 Milverton Boulevard and wrote back to us. And, letters took forever because they went by ship, and settled in and asked if he could have anything for us when we arrived, any kind of present. And I only wanted 2 things. I wanted a switchblade and a Davy Crockett hat. I don't know. But anyway, that's the truth. And so my father said about getting these for a 4-year-old boy. Naturally, the switchblade was made of plastic. The Davy Crockett hat he made by taking a Radisson hat from Quebec and sewing a tail of a raccoon on it. And it was immensely large, but I loved it. But anyway, we were still in England, and we got these letters from my dad, and it was time for us to leave. And my mom and my sister and I followed and came to Canada on the RMS Corinthia, which is Cunard Lines. And Cunard used to be White Star, which gave us that wonderful ship, the Titanic. And so we came across the North Atlantic. It took a week, and it was in October. And judging by the weather we've had recently, the North Atlantic in October can be a nightmare. And we were in the tail of a hurricane for 3 days. And it was so rough that HMS Corinthia should have been renamed, RMS Corinthia should have been renamed RMS Vomit Bucket, because I think the captain and the ship's surgeon were the only people on board who were not ill. And I had my first ginger ale on that ship. And one day we attempted to get into the dining room, holding onto these ropes that were placed in all the gangways. And they were cooking corn on the cob. And that became anchored to nausea for my sister. And for about 30 years, she could not stand the smell of corn on the cob because it would fire that state of nausea again, going all the way back to the Corinthia. But eventually, we landed in Quebec City and survived the trip. And my father met us with the Davy Crockett hat and the plastic switchblade.
Wonderful, wonderful metaphor. So that wraps up session 24 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. I'm Chris Thompson, and this is Dr. Mike.
Thanks again.
We are signing out.
Good night. Wide awake now.